the Pacific Ocean. October 2012. Scientists aboard a research ship between Australia and New Caledonia set a course for 19 degrees south latitude and 160 degrees east longitude, the location of Sandy Island. But when they arrive, they make a shocking discovery. The island is not there. Digital scientific databases have shown Sandy Island to be 15 miles long and 3 miles wide, approximately the size of Manhattan. Small islands sometimes disappear due to rising ocean levels. But the researchers find no evidence of a sunken landmass, just ocean waters 4,600 feet deep.
Sandy Island is an island of great mystery. It literally disappeared. According to early eyewitness accounts, including those by Captain Cook in the 1700s, this island clearly existed, and it makes you wonder, how can an island just disappear? Was it there to begin with? Absolutely it was. There's eyewitness accounts of it.
Captain James Cook was the first to establish Sandy Island on a map back in 1774. And in fact, the island still appeared even on modern satellite maps up until 2013, when it was finally removed based on the findings of the University of Sydney. But how could an island that has appeared on maps for over 230 years suddenly disappear?
There are a number of accounts within folklore and legend of mythical islands. For instance, the Antilles and others which appeared on ancient maps and yet which don't exist today. So did they once exist? Do they exist only at certain times? We could be dealing with a phenomena whereby these islands disappear at certain times and then reappear. Although, is that something that's natural? Is this something to do with geology? Or is this something to do with something more supernatural? This is obviously a mystery which remains to be solved.
When the University of Sydney findings were first revealed, many scientists insisted that the researchers must have been looking in the wrong place, pointing to the fact that satellites had recorded temperatures in this location consistent with the presence of land. Scientists would later claim that this anomaly was due to errors in the data sets. But how could the temperature data, the satellite images, and numerous other maps dating back to the 18th century all be in error?
It's possible that these islands actually do exist, but they're somehow being cloaked by whoever might be using the islands. For instance, extraterrestrial visitors could very easily create a light-bending type of device which could make it appear that an island that was once there is no longer there.
There are other stories of islands that appear and disappear, and that sometimes there's a mist around them. There are stories like this around the Samoan Islands. So you have to wonder if extraterrestrials have some kind of super technology that allows them to cloak islands and make them appear and disappear. It boggles the mind that such a technology would exist, and yet it appears to be so.
Could extraterrestrials really be using advanced cloaking technology to hide Sandy Island? Some ancient astronaut theorists believe there may be an even more incredible explanation behind the disappearance of Sandy Island.
Things like Sandy Island that somehow was located, and then when they went to go look for it, is gone. It's very possible that these aren't islands, but are some technological device coming up to the surface or landing for a little while and going away.
In ancient Greek mythology, we have these stories of the asteria, of the falling stars that would fall into the water. But they wouldn't sink. They could, in fact, travel from place to place. Floating islands, so to speak. So what if, in this particular case, we have a similar story? Is that really what is happening?
The Southeast Pacific Ocean. Rapa Nui, or Easter Island as it has become known, is one of the most remote places on the planet. The nearest inhabited island is 1,100 miles to the west, and its nearest continental country, Chile, is over 2,000 miles away. Scattered around the perimeter of the island, most with their backs to the sea, stand nearly 300 massive stone figures known as the Moai. Most are between 15 to 20 feet tall, but the tallest stands over 70 feet, and the heaviest weighs up to 165 tons.
Why did these people go to such great effort to build these giant statues? No one else in Polynesia was doing that. When you talk to the people of Easter Island today, the Rapa Nui people, they say that they were doing them to honor certain important ancestral ariki, or rulers. These moais are images of great ancestors.
Some ancient astronaut theorists have suggested that the Moai may have been erected by a lost race of giants that once inhabited the island. Interestingly, C.F. Barons, a member of the Dutch expedition team that first discovered the island in 1722, described some of the priestly class of inhabitants as Goliaths.
C.F. Barron reported that he saw giant people. Someone had rowed up to their boat that was some 15 foot tall. He really made a big deal of these giants on the island.
When the first explorers landed on Easter Island, what they found was that there were two types of people there. There were the short ears and the long ears. And the long ears were often described as giants, and they were a different race from the short ears. Presumably, they had these very, very long ears and earlobes. And they were the priestly caste. They were directing the creation and the movement of these statues around the island.
They were said to be so tall that each of the crew could walk under the legs of these giants. The sheer size of the megaliths on Easter Island do suggest they were made by giants. There are legends all around the world linked with megalithic sites, which may give some clarity on who and how they actually built these sites.
Francis Mazière, a French ethnologist who conducted research on the island in 1963, recorded local legends that the first men to live on the island were of very large stature.
In his book, The Mysteries of Easter Island, Francis Mazière talks about that the first islanders of Easter Island allegedly were these tall, giant people.
There were inhabitants there that were 8 to 10, maybe even 12 feet high. And what do you automatically think of? Genesis in the Bible talks about how something that was non-human, perhaps angelic, perhaps extraterrestrial, saw the fair maidens of humans had intercourse, and from that came the hybrids known as the giants of old.
Is it possible that the accounts of giants on Earth are in fact true, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest? Did the remnants of this lost race continue to exist on Easter Island? And if so, just what happened to these beings? Up to 15,000 people lived on Easter Island prior to its western discovery. But only 52 years later, explorer James Cook described a site of mass devastation, with nearly all of the Moai statues toppled over, and only about 700 inhabitants left on the island. And no mention of giants.
Something seems to have happened at Easter Island that decreased the population seriously. And it seems that a number of people either died off, left, or something happened to them.
Some ancient astronaut theorists propose that evidence left at the site may point to a more intriguing theory regarding their disappearance. Archaeologists found unfinished moai left at the quarry and tools scattered around, as if the work had been suddenly abandoned.
We don't know why they would have stopped this, and even what happened exactly to the priestly caste of giants who was overseeing all of this work. Suddenly, these people just vanished, all the work stopped.
The issue that keeps coming up about Easter Island, was this a genetic experiment where non-humans would use islands, high mountains, peninsulas, so that there would not be interference with or contamination of their experiments? Maybe that's why they were transferred out.
March 1963. 75 miles off the coast of Puerto Rico. While training in anti-submarine maneuvers, the United States Navy's fleet, led by the USS Wasp aircraft carrier, detects an unknown sonar target moving in the nearby waters. For 4 days, the fleet tracked the unknown object, recording its speed at more than 150 knots, or 170 miles per hour.
There is nothing in any naval inventory anywhere in the world that can approach anything remotely that speed, not then, not now. Moreover, the object descended to a depth of something like 27,000 feet. Again, another impossibility. The pressures down there are vastly too much. They would crush any vessel that went down that deep.
That time, the technology that we had, the best that we could do underwater was about 45 knots and a maximum depth of about 3,000 feet.
For the last 100, 200 years, there have been many, many accounts of objects that have been seen underwater. But exactly what they are, we still do not know.
There's been a tremendous surge of UFO sightings in Puerto Rico since the early 1990s. And for many of the Puerto Rican witnesses, they're absolutely convinced that there's some sort of massive futuristic installation deep below Puerto Rico under the ocean bed.
Is it possible that aliens have bases here on Earth, hidden deep underwater, and off the coasts of islands? Could this explain why so many islands around the world have stories of unexplained sightings of objects both overhead and beneath the sea?
Isolated islands would be a perfect location for, say, extraterrestrial beings to make their base of operations. Radar could spot any kind of craft in orbit very quickly. However, if you had your base underwater, near an island, a lot more difficult to be discovered.
Islands are essentially mountains that are mostly underwater. What they are in essence is energetic upwellings of the energy of the Earth pushing higher and higher and higher. Logically, these types of locations would be very attractive to visitors from another world, especially visitors that would be looking for an ideal place to set up a base or a landing spot, or simply a place where they could draw some of the Earth's energy.
The Aleutian Islands. Just off the Alaskan coast, this chain of more than 100 small islands extends west for 1,100 miles, separating the Bering Sea from the Pacific Ocean. Here, in the summer of 1945, 14 crew members of the United States Army transport Delaroff reported seeing what they believed to be a large UFO emerge from the waters near the island of Adak.
It's reported that a round object that appeared dark against the setting sun at the time actually rose up vertically into the air and then circled the boat 2 or possibly 3 times and was visible for about 7 or 8 minutes before it vanished.
Something that comes out of the water, circles around, and then takes off like that. That's well beyond anything we're supposed to have. And they're in the middle of the ocean. That's the important thing to remember here. There's just nothing that's supposed to be there, and yet there's activity being reported there.
UFO sightings around the Aleutian Islands continue to this day. But why? Is it perhaps more than mere coincidence that the native people known as the Aleuts believe this is the exact spot where their ancestors first descended from the skies?
The Aleuts believe they descended from a creature that had come from the sky. Dog actually had fallen to the island of Umnak and had had 2 pups with paws. But the children that came from those 2 were perfect humans. So by way of this descent from the heavens and by way of animal form, we get the Aleutian people.
I find it intriguing that the Aleuts' origin story has something to do with them having arrived from the sky, essentially saying that they have been seeded. So the fact that to this day, that area of the world is considered a hot spot for UFOs is not coincidence.
There have been rumors that there is an underground alien or UFO base in the Aleutian Islands. The question is, could a base really exist there? And the answer is yeah. There's plenty of places, knolls, atolls, volcanoes, where if hollowed out, they would pretty much make ideal bases for UFOs to use to come and go as they please and to investigate that area.
The Melanesian Islands off the coast of Papua New Guinea, 8th century AD. According to legend, Aboriginal tribal leaders set sail east toward the Hawaiian Islands. They carry with them a highly revered ancestral crystal skull. Today, that skull, known as Synergy, is under the care of guardian Sherry Whitfield. It was given to her as a gift by a European businessman.
When I first got the skull, I only knew a little bit of the history of it. I knew that it had come across the Pacific in a reed canoe. It had been in Hawaii, on Easter Island, with the people of the sky. In the 1600s, the skull was given to a young nun in Peru. On her deathbed in 1720, she passed the skull to a native family and said, keep the skull until the right person comes. And she gave them the history, and they disappeared into the jungle.
In 2005, Whitfield was contacted by a representative of the Aboriginal tribe who saw a photograph of Synergy in a newspaper.
And he said he brought the photos and he brought the little skull to the shaman and the chief, and everything stopped. And they declared 24 hours of feasting and telling stories about the skulls. It was really cool because Really, they don't talk that much about the skulls in their everyday life. It's part of their sacred secrets and their teachings. Now, they say that they didn't make the skull, that it was passed to them as a legacy. So it's an ancestral object. Their legend is that their tribe was started by a white man and a black man, twins. Their whole religion revolves around twins, and they have the twin of this skull. Their legends are that there were two of these skulls made identical. There's a powerful spirit in crystal skulls.
Melanesia is populated by all different classifications of spirits, of ancestral spirits, meaning spirits of the remote ancestors that have to do with a particular group's creation story, or recently dead ancestors. Spiritual energy in Melanesian society is just not for people. It can be in places, in objects, in plants, in animals.
The notion of a spiritual energy that resides in inanimate objects is widespread throughout the South Pacific. Anthropologists who studied Melanesian societies in the 19th and early 20th centuries termed this supernatural force mana.
The idea of mana is that there is a divine magical energy that is both the source of life and a kind of animating presence in things, in places, in people. There is reverence for specific objects because they seem particularly strong in this magical power. Some believe that the power comes from ancestral sources, and that the older the ancestors, the greater the power.
These things are incredibly important to the people in all aspects of life, like warfare, hunting, gardening, fishing, any type of thing that normal human beings can't control. And these objects with this ancestral spirit energy, if you control them right and access them right and speak to them right and get their permission and get their aid and get their help, they can in effect pre-kill your enemy prior to battle.
Is it really possible for objects like crystal skulls to be possessed by otherworldly spirits, as South Pacific Islanders believe? And if so, where do these spirits come from?
In the South Pacific, their ancestral myths talk about people descending from the sky. One of the mythologies talks about two brothers descending from the sky, Barkulkul and Maralul, and the time in which they spent. It was considered to be the golden age. After that time ended, guess what? The two of them went back up into the sky to return where they came from, the stars.
The core message of crystal skulls is that our ancestors are very specific, that these are divine, that these are ancient. Some of them are definitely known to be used for divination, whereby somebody basically makes contact with an intelligence who is either contactable or resident within this crystal skull.
Could crystal skulls really provide a link to mankind's extraterrestrial ancestors, as many ancient astronaut theorists believe? And if so, is there something unique about the properties of these translucent objects that could enable them to contain supernatural powers? Anglesey, British Isles, 60 AD. Roman soldiers conquered the last stronghold of the Druids, a class of mystics and priests whose roots stretch back to the dawn of European civilization.
Everything that we know about the Druids, we know through their enemies, the Romans, who went to a great deal of trouble to exterminate the Druids because they saw them, rightly, as social organizers, as important leaders around whom the Celtic tribes coalesced. Many powers get attributed to the Druids. For example, that the Druids held mystical knowledge. The Druids had a philosophy of reincarnation.
The Druids used crystal to tell fortunes, to read the future, to do ecstatic mystical rituals. The Scott Highlanders called these stones of power. There's something about the crystal clarity, the strange experience of staring into it, the things one can imagine. And the crystal ball that grew out of this and used by more recent seers really helped a person slip into a sort of trance state from which they're able to imagine or hear or experience or see something that is taken as important information. The information was considered to come from the gods or the spirits.
Gazing into a crystal ball was another means in medieval times as to how to come into contact with the world of the divine, to make contact with otherworldly intelligences.
Is it possible that ancient cultures accessed other dimensions through the use of crystal objects, as some ancient astronaut theorists suggest? And if so, might there be a scientific reason why divination objects, like crystal skulls, are made of this unique material?
Crystal has a unique lattice structure, and some people believe that it has an other dimensional quality. It can transmit and receive messages from other dimensions and is actually other dimensional substance itself. Crystal's ability to communicate interdimensionally could explain why people throughout history have used crystal balls to foretell the future or even to look into the past.
And it's interesting because when you think of the legend, crystal skulls were containers of great knowledge, then perhaps there is vast amounts of information, as the Native American elders say, inside a crystal skull.